so people can listen. People who haven't attended are able to then listen, and you can listen back if you want to. As I said, anything that we refer to and all the slides will be sent out as well, so you don't need to worry too much about making notes or anything. Before we actually start on the presentation, we just wanted to do a couple of sort of urgent announcements regarding funding. So the key one is that the Chancellor announced, I think over a month ago now, that there was 750 million coming down to the sector, with 370 going to sort of small to medium-sized organisations. 200 million is being made available in the first tranche, which is coming through tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, and that will be distributed by the National Lottery Community Fund. So I would advise all of you to go on at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning to find out what the process is, what the eligibility criteria are. As we understand it at the moment, there are two aspects to the funding. One is to increase community support to vulnerable people affected by COVID. And the second one is to reduce temporary closures of essential charities and social enterprises, ensuring services for vulnerable people impacted have the financial resources to operate and reduce the burden on public services. So that's what they're sort of saying, that's their kind of top line, but obviously there will be eligibility criteria within that. So worth checking in the morning, and I think we're going to be publishing something about that as well. And as I think NCVO are also going to be doing webinars around it as well, so just keep your eyes open for that. And a few others that have kind of either been around for a little while or have just come on stream. The Heritage Lottery Emergency Grants, that's been around for a few weeks now, and that's between 3,000 and 250,000, and that's split into two sections. So 3,000 to 50,000 is to help organisations deal with immediate risks and become more stable, and 50,000 up to 250,000 is for heritage assets at immediate risks, and that's open until the end of June, till 30th of June. So I would have a look at that if you feel that you're eligible. Elise Turner, who we have a really good relationship with, is always available for a chat over the phone or via Zoom if you wanted to have a discussion directly with her. The Heart of England have just announced a new small grant scheme called Doing Things Differently, which is about reshaping your services. So if you're changing the way that you work, or you're changing your emphasis, or changing the way that you work with your communities, then they want to hear from you, and they've got grants up to 20,000 to support you to do that. Severn Trent Community Fund told us yesterday that they're going to be reopening their sort of normal grant scheme on the 1st of June, which is really positive to hear. It's nice to know that funders, particularly funders that are providing larger grants, are kind of thinking about reopening and starting again, which is great. And their funding is up to 250,000 for local initiatives that meet the following aims. So one is around people, so healthier lifestyles and skills development. One is about place, which is projects that help create better places to live in and use. And one is around environment, which is projects that facilitate a healthy and natural environment and greater access to it. They're also doing virtual workshops or phone calls, so I would check the website for more details and see if you can kind of book onto one of those. And if you want any more information, please email any of us about that. And one that I saw yesterday is Independent Age has announced £2 million for smaller charities supporting older people through the crisis. So it's UK, across the UK, working with older people hardest hit by the virus, and those are grants of up to 15,000. That's just a bit of funding information, but the key one really is the lottery one, which was announced this morning and coming online tomorrow. So on with the actual presentation. So we've split it into two areas really, and we'll stop for questions in between. So one is around getting through this period, and the second part is about planning for the future and looking kind of post-COVID. These are not in any particular order. Every organisation is different, so everybody will have different priorities, but these are the types of things that we think that you should be thinking about. And a lot of this is based on a tool that's been developed by AKIVO, which is the Association for Chief Executives of Voluntary Organisations. And again, it's looking at the kind of now and next steps. So we'll circulate that tool to you afterwards as well. But what they're saying is these are the areas that they think that we should be looking at. So understanding your financial situation and your cash flow. So review your current cash flow, look at what you had got planned, and understand the worst case scenario for your weekly cash flow to the end of the financial year. So looking at what you did have and what you are now kind of facing, and looking at the opportunities to save money or look for other funding, look for ways to kind of meet that gap that there will be. What I would say is make sure that you're comparing how it was before this happened to how it is now, and any applications that you put in reflect only the difference between them, because funders aren't going to want to fund issues that were there beforehand. They're looking to fund COVID specific issues at the moment generally. So look for opportunities within that, look for ways of, as I said, of saving money. You know, if there's opportunities to save money on things like rent or mortgage or other, you know, other outgoings that you're not now, that you don't now have, you know, those might be things that you could consider. Do you have contingency plans in place with funders to support you to the level that's required? So have you spoken to your funders? What are they expecting? What are the possibilities to kind of reuse the funding that you have from them? Can you change the timescales of that piece of funding? Can you look at different ways to deliver, again, that would perhaps save you money, or allow you to kind of change the emphasis of the grant that was given to you? Can you look at your existing fundraising strategy if you have one, and again review that and look at what you now need to do and what's different? Can you make a plan for the situation that you're in now, and again be clear about what it is that you need, what your ask is. If you're going to approach funders, you need to know what you're asking for. But you may still have to show funders that you're still thinking about the future. You're not just focusing on getting through the next 3 months. It's likely that they will want to see that you have a plan in place for after that 3-month period. So within the Akivo tool, they've got a sort of a table which looks at the various areas of your organisation that you should. And as I said, we'll go into more detail about all of these during the presentation, but what they're suggesting that you do is to look at what's critical, what's serious, what's not serious, and what's not applicable. And then you've got an idea of where you need to kind of focus your efforts at the moment and going forward. So cash and liquidity obviously is your cash flow, which we've just spoken about. So can you look at reallocating existing funding? Are you looking for funding from elsewhere? I'm going to clump staff and volunteers together. So looking at their availability, looking at what resources you've got in terms of staff and volunteers. Do you need more volunteers? Are you having to furlough staff? What does that mean for your service delivery? What does that mean in terms of your clients? You know, how many clients have you got? How many staff have you got? How many volunteers have you got? Looking at the measures that you need to have in place in order to support staff and volunteers. So making sure that they're safe, making sure that they're well, supporting any mental health concerns, making sure that they're safe at home, or if they're out in the community, if they're delivering things, are they safe? Have they got what they need in order to do that? Looking at your technology, so obviously everybody's working situation has changed vastly. Is your technology working for you? Is it enough? Is it covering the things that you need it to cover? And are your staff and your volunteers, are they comfortable with what they're having to do with technology in order to continue to deliver the services that you want to deliver? Making sure that your data is still secure. So looking, considering your kind of GDPR obligate duties, because we're all working in a different way. If your staff and volunteers are out and about now, and that data is sort of more mobile, more portable, is it safe? Is it secure? And are they secure in using it? Is it easy to access if people are at home or people are in different places? Is it easy for everybody to be able to access the data that they need? Information. Do you have enough information, and is it coming from the right places to be able to make decisions about what's happening UK-wide, regionally, locally, and what you need to do, what the regulations are, what the guidelines are. Things are changing all the time at the moment. So guidelines, restrictions, regulations, they are changing sort of on a day by day, week by week basis. So it's really important that the information that you have is up to date. Make sure that it's coming from the right places, it's reliable, and also make sure that you're using it in the right way, and that you're distributing it to others as much as you possibly can. For larger organisations, that you might want to consider supply chain constraints. So do you have issues with, are there things that you need to have in order to deliver your services, and are there any issues with accessing those things? Do you need to look at alternative sources? Are you talking to your suppliers regularly, making sure that those things can come to you? Increasing beneficiary issues. So your beneficiaries, your clients, your service users will have had things that they needed pre-COVID, but those things might have changed, they might have got worse, their needs might have become other needs, or become worse in terms of what they need. So things like domestic abuse, mental health, child poverty, debt, crime and antisocial behaviour, all of those things are likely to increase for your service users. So are you able to respond to that? Can you support those things? Can you reshape the services to look at ways to support those issues? And are you legally able to do that? There might be kind of capacity or resource restraints, but there may also be restraints within your constitution. So you need to make sure that you're not delivering services that aren't within your objects, within your constitution. So it's worth considering that before responding. We all respond naturally to those needs, to those asks from our clients. So just make sure that you're within your rights to be able to do that. Health and safety obviously is paramount. So are the working conditions safe for your staff, your volunteers, your service users? Any interactions? You need to consider carefully your responsibilities, your kind of legal responsibilities, also your ethical responsibilities to your staff and your volunteers, and the liability really of you as an organisation. Make sure that your public liability insurance covers you, that that you've thought about those things and you've got those safeguards in place. Looking at your trustees, so are they supportive? Are they engaging with the organisation? Are they communicating well? Obviously, everybody's going through this crisis, but your trustees do have a legal obligation to ensure the safety and the future of your organisation. Do they have the right skills and experience to be dealing with the current situation? Do you need to seek advice from elsewhere for the time being to support that? And then looking at your clients, most importantly. So what barriers are there to accessing your services? What are they struggling with? What are they finding difficult? And what can you do to support that? And then there might be other things that you think of as well that are very specific to you and your organisation. So consider those as well. So looking after your staff and your volunteers. So obviously, a lot of staff are furloughed at the moment. So are you making sure that you're in line with any regulations around furloughing? So the Chancellor's announced obviously that that's going to continue until October now. But again, we need to make sure that we're keeping up to date with those regulations. And as much as we are trying to keep up to date, the government website really has got the most up-to-date information. So we would always signpost you there to find out exactly what the current guidance is. But obviously, if you're furloughing your staff cannot then do anything really that could be deemed as working for the organisation. So that there is a very, very clear boundary between working and being furloughed. So you need to be clear, and your staff need to be clear about what they can and can't do. So how is that then affecting your delivery? What does that mean for the services that you're delivering? Do you need to look at recruiting volunteers to replace that staff work, or do you need to look at funding to be able to continue to pay your staff and reshape the things that you're doing? What else can you do? What other services could you provide? Keeping staff and volunteers safe, again, paramount. So what do staff need? Do they need do they need physical safety equipment like PPE? Do they need sort of support for working from home? Do they need IT? Do they need anything that would enable them to work more remotely? What are your legal requirements? Again, we would sort of signpost you to the government website. They have everything on there really to do with, obviously, to do with your legal requirements to keep your staff and your volunteers safe. There's a really good section on there about if you are recruiting volunteers specifically to do to deliver COVID focused work. So delivering food, picking up prescriptions. It's got loads of information about how to keep volunteers safe, so it's well worth a read. Have you got enough staff to deliver, or volunteers to deliver the services that you want to deliver or that you're being asked to deliver? So we at One Walsall have been inundated actually with volunteers. We've had over 600 people come forward wanting to volunteer, and we've been working to make sure that every single one has either got a DBS check in place or a police check. So we have, if you do need more volunteers to deliver the services that you want to deliver, then please get in touch with us, because we can match those up to you easily, and Lucy and Sarah are working hard to do that every day. Communication is key, so keep in touch with your service users, with your clients. If you are keeping in touch, again, this is a sort of a bit of a blurred line in some cases, and it needs to be really clear. If you are still keeping in touch with your service users, that is still considered work or volunteering, so you cannot be furloughed and then continue to make that contact. That is more about reshaping the way that you're working. So if you had clients that attended on a daily or a weekly basis, and you're now contacting them remotely or virtually, then that's still providing the service. So you need to be clear about what those guidelines are on furloughing. But it is important to keep in touch with those service users, and I know that all organisations who are working with communities, and particularly those organisations working with vulnerable communities, will want to keep that communication up. So consider what they need, what you can do, what you're allowed to do, and what your service users need. Keep everybody up to date, so keeping external partners, keeping the general public up to date, keeping your internal staff, volunteers up to date, your clients up to date with what you're doing. I mean, even if you can't deliver the services that you've been used to delivering, you can still have a presence on social media. You can still communicate in various different ways to make sure that those people are still kind of in touch with somebody and have that line of communication, but also just to keep your presence there, so that when things do return to the new normal, as they say, you have still got that contact, and it's easy for you to pick up really where you kind of left off. Make sure your IT again is working for you. Make sure that you've got the infrastructure that you need in order to be able to keep in touch with people and to keep people updated with what you're doing. And if you need if you need volunteers who have social media skills, that's something that we've been doing over the last couple of weeks, is placing people with social media skills into organisations, so that while they're not able to deliver the services, they can still keep in touch, and they can still have that presence on Facebook and Twitter and all of the other channels. And if you're not able to support, if you feel like if the organisation has had to cease its services, and that support, that contact is limited because of lack of resources, because your own staff and volunteers are vulnerable, for whatever reason, if you're not able to provide that support, signpost people to other services, signpost people to local services that are able to support them. So if you can't support them, you should be aware of the organisations that can. And just I'm sure you all know, because we've sent it out several times, but the Making Connections Walsall hubs, there are one in each of the 4 localities, and they can provide help with food deliveries, prescriptions, shopping, befriending, a range of different services. People can refer themselves, or you can refer clients through to that service if you email that email address that's just come up, and or phone that number, which actually goes through to West Midlands Fire Service. They're managing the sort of triage, I think. So if you call that number, you're able to refer people into that service, and then they can get the support that they need. And there will be other services in your area as well that can provide the things that your clients need. So it's worth understanding who else is, what other services are available. So obviously there is opportunity to kind of be more innovative in this situation, and not just think, well, you know, we can't do this, we're limited, we can't now deliver the things that we were delivering, so we may as well shut up shop and reopen in 3 months. But there are also ways that you can still be delivering services, or reshaping your services, repurposing your staff and your volunteers to meet needs. They may not be the needs that you were supporting, but there are needs that are still there, and probably increased needs as well. So it's worth considering what you can do. So talking to your service users, you know, you had a good understanding of what they needed before this happened, so there's no reason why you can't contact them and get a good understanding of what they need now, and looking to kind of reshape your services to meet those needs. So look at your existing plans, and then review those and ask your service users, talk to them, talk to carers, talk to communities, you know, link in with networks and forums locally, and find out what it is that people need and where the gaps are. Look at how you can support that realistically. So practically, are you able to? Do you have the resources? Do you have the capacity? And if not, what do you need? What do you need in order to be able to provide, to meet the needs of your clients now? So what needs to change, and what can and can't change? What are your restrictions? What are your limits? But also what are the possibilities? What are the opportunities? And what do you need in order to be able to support them? So do you need funding? Do you need staffing? Do you need volunteers? Do you need equipment? Do you need better IT? So think of all the things that you might need in order to change the way that you're working, in order to meet those new and emerging needs from your clients. Can you work with others? I think that's something that will come out of this period, is that more and more organisations will look to work in partnership, and I think there'll be a lot more enthusiasm from people to link in with other organisations that are working and that are delivering similar or complementary services. And I think that could be a really positive thing, and it's something that funders always look for. They want to see that organisations are linking with other local organisations, whether they're, you know, within Walsall or even regionally, and looking at those kind of complementary services and that linked up approach. So that is definitely something worth kind of looking into. Measure your impact. So look at, maybe it's a time to kind of review what you had been doing and looking at the impact that you'd made there, but also during this time, as much as you're going to be concentrating on looking for funding and looking after your staff and keeping in contact with your clients, it's also really important to measure the things that you're still achieving, that you're still being able to deliver, because funders more than ever will want you to kind of prove your worth. You know, they're looking now for the organisations that need to be saved. It's less, it's at that kind of slightly more critical point where they're looking for a reason really to fund organisations. So you really need to say, well, you know, without us this wouldn't happen, or without us this is the situation. You know, so it's really important to be able to say, this is what we're good at, and if, you know, we need to be here, we need to exist. And if there's really nothing that you can provide, if you can't reshape your services, if you can't, you know, repurpose your staff, what should you do? What should you be thinking about? How should you plan the next 3 months? Do you just stop services? Do you look at how you communicate whilst that period is continuing? In a worst case scenario, what's the procedure for dissolving the organisation? What has to happen then? How do you ensure that your service users are supported during that situation, your staff, your volunteers. You need to look at kind of worst case scenario, as well as trying to be optimistic and looking for the opportunities. Think about what the worst case is and make sure that you have that kind of plan in place. So property and running costs. If you have an office space or a premises that you need to look after, again, it needs to be included in your cash flow. You need to make sure that everything is involved, and again, make sure it's a worst case scenario that you're looking at, just so that you can plan for the worst and hope for the best. You can look at things like rebates and payment holidays. Think about what you're entitled to in terms of business rates and council tax relief and anything else that you may be able to access. And tap into those things. Ask the questions. Harass people. Try and find out as much as possible what you can get, what expenses or what costs you can reduce as much as possible. So there were a few, obviously, that came through the government that are being delivered through the local authority. So these are the sort of business rates and the small business grants fund. Again, we'll send out the links to all of these. But there's information on the main government website, but there's also information on Walsall's website about how to access those things. And it will just be a relief, basically. It will just kind of provide that financial relief for 2, 3, possibly longer months. And just keep checking what you're entitled to, what you might be able to access. It's also worth looking at your lease agreement. So is there a possibility to get out of that, or again to take a holiday from that? Do you still need it? Have you found that actually you can work differently in this environment? Can you do more remote working? Could you live without an office or a shop front? And think about those things, think about those possibilities, because it can save you an awful lot of money. Or could you even look at repurposing the building? So could you look at potentially subletting or talking to your landlord about using the building for something else? Food banks and things like that are looking for premises at the moment to kind of distribute and store. So could you look at things like that? Again, try and look for the opportunities as well as the challenges. And remember your kind of ongoing maintenance costs. So include everything that you would need, again, in your cash flow. So look at utilities, look at insurance, make sure that your building is secure while you're not there. So looking at grants, loans and contract delivery that you may already have. So we've now got a funding officer in place who I'm sure you've had contact with, and she's here today, Lighton. And she's here to support all organisations with bids that are going in at the moment. But if you already have a grant or a contract that you're delivering, you'll need to understand what your obligations are in terms of a break in service delivery. So talk to your funders. Everybody's in this situation. Everybody understands what's happening, and they will want to hear from you. They'll want to hear what your proposals are in terms of extending timescales. What can you deliver realistically? What can't you deliver? What could you deliver differently? Can you reuse some of that grant or those contracts and do something differently? And if that's something that you want to do, make a plan and deliver that to the funder and say, this is what we've talked about and this is what we can deliver. The likelihood is that they will be really receptive to those conversations, and they will want to understand, they will want your understanding of what's going on, of your communities, of your clients. So it's really important that you have those conversations and try and understand what it is that you can and can't do. Yeah, so look at, realistic, what can you deliver realistically, what can't you deliver, and talk to your funder or your commissioner. Agree an action plan, agree the changes to the original agreement, look at timescales, and look at additional grants from current funders. So there are a few funders who have said they want to support organisations that they've already funded. They don't want their previous grants to go to not be wasted, but they want to support those organisations that they've previously funded to make sure that those existing grants can still be delivered and to support the organisation as best as possible. And then looking at current COVID-19 funding, so as we've said, that there is a lot of funding out there, and it's coming out, on a weekly basis, more or less. So be prepared, make a plan with a clear, realistic budget or a cash flow projection. Make sure that you're being clear about what you need now as a result of this situation, rather than trying to ask for funding to resolve issues that were there beforehand, or for projects that you developed beforehand. Funders generally are focusing on the COVID-19 at the moment. That obviously, that will change over the next few months, and we'll be able to start looking at applications for projects that you had been planning. But I think for the time being, really, you just need to be concentrating on this and on the situation that this has led to for you. So I've lost my place. Yeah, so make a plan. So there are, move quickly but efficiently. So as I said, they're coming out all of the time, different pots of funding, but they are going really quickly as well. And there are a lot. We've had examples of funders who have closed their deadlines early because they've been so inundated with applications. And the National Lottery Community Fund money, that is going to disappear quickly. The Heritage Lottery funding, that is going to disappear quickly. So please don't rush your applications, but be efficient in the way that you apply. So my advice has always been to make your plan, to build up your ask and your why you need the funding, what you need, what's going to be achieved with it, what it's going to go for, and then you can start using that as a basis for all of your applications, for a number of different applications. If you have that basis, it's a lot easier then to kind of fill in a number of different applications that you can go for. But the funding that we've found that are available, so there's grants that are specific for older people, there's running costs, heritage, mental health, domestic abuse, criminal justice, there's small grants, large grants. There's a huge variety of opportunities out there, and Lighton and Colin and I are all here to kind of support you and point you in the right direction of those funds. So please do get in touch with us. So just in terms of next steps, just to summarise what we've been talking about, and then we'll have a chance for some questions. So cash flow, be realistic, think of your worst case scenario. Think about your staff, think about your numbers, your resources, the safety and your legal duty to support your staff and your volunteers. Consult with your service users, rethink what you're doing, reshape your services as much as you can, as much as you're allowed. Make sure you still communicate internally and externally. Make sure your presence is still felt, and make sure that important information is shared within the organisation with your service users and externally. Look at your funding, make a plan, be efficient, make sure you've got everything that you need in order to apply to all of those different funders. And think about the future if you can. I know it's a crazy time and everybody's kind of fighting fires and just trying to get money in and look after the staff and their volunteers. But if you have got a bit of time, if you can use some of this time to review and to start thinking ahead, it will put you in a good position. And as I said, when you are putting funding applications in, although the funders accept that what they're likely to be asked for is support for this period, they're likely to want to see some thought having gone into what happens after this and where do we go to from here. Any questions on that bit? There's another section which is going to be about another 10 minutes. So, but if anybody's got any questions at this point, feel free to chip in. No?
Hi. I am a limited company that at the moment trying to change to a CIC. Obviously that limits the kind of funding that I'm able to apply for, though my business model is based on mental health and finance. Right. And that was just naivety on my part. And what sort of funding, or if any at all, is there available for limited companies?
It would depend on your governing document and what you're kind of set up to do. It might be better to have a conversation separately, because it depends.
Okay.
If you can forward your constitution to me, then I can have a look at that. If you're a not-for-profit organisation, then that does open you up to lots of different funding opportunities.
It's something I was doing before, and no, it's obviously just hit a massive stall.
Okay. Well, we can have a chat about that definitely afterwards. That's absolutely fine. Or you can have a chat to Brighton about it. I mean, I know I've known charities in the past that didn't ever register as a charity, but they were a limited company. So it depends on how you're set up and whether you are or not.
Because I have received funding before, because everything I do is community based. But yeah, maybe I'll grab you after then. Thank you.
Yeah, no, definitely, that's fine. Any other questions?
Amy, can I make an observation? It's not really a question, but it might be. One of the things that you just made quite clear was that a lot of funding that is around at the moment is specifically COVID related, and that it shouldn't try and cover other projects. But one of the things that's been suggested to us is that there are projects that we probably were thinking of in the future, but which would have a direct beneficial effect during the COVID situation. Things which would involve better social distancing, that sort of thing within our building. Presumably, there's no problem in making a bid for that sort of funding.
No, I wouldn't have thought so. No, I think it just seems, well, from what I can see, a lot of the funding that's sort of available at the moment, and the priority is very much COVID related. But if there's something that you wanted to do which actually, it still kind of contributes to that agenda, then definitely, if there's if the outcomes are that people would be supported through this period to be able to still access services, then yes, absolutely.
Good, we'll give it a go. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Okay, so I'm going to move on. If there are any more questions, as I said, please feel free to put them in the chat, or we'll put up our email addresses at the end as well, so you can email us directly and have a separate chat. So after, it's kind of beyond COVID. So these are the things that Akiva are saying that you should be thinking about, kind of moving after this period, or moving on beyond this period. So, So what will your service look like going? How has it changed? How will it change? And they've actually got these tools, which is about kind of what 3 surprising things did you learn during the lockdown period? And then with hindsight, what 3 things do you most wish you'd had in place before all of this kicked off? And I think, a lot of organisations are finding that, a lack of reserves probably has had an impact on what they've been able to deliver during this period. Lots of organisations lots of kind of businesses have been saved because they had a decent amount of reserves in the bank that can kind of see them through this period. I think generally that's not the case for charities, certainly not for smaller community groups. And I think actually there'll be more of more enthusiasm for kind of building that up and creating that kind of safety net following on from this. And looking into the future, so what will you do that's new or different? So there might be things that you're finding actually that are working much better for you, things that actually long term you might think, well, why didn't we always do this? Why haven't we always worked in a partnership with somebody else? Why haven't we always shared office space with somebody and saved money? Why can't we always work from home? So there are things, I just think that there will be positives, there will be opportunities that come out of this. So look at the way that you're working now, look at the things that you're doing differently, look at the feedback that you're getting from your clients, your service users, from the communities, and the things that are really positive, and use those to kind of reshape and think, you know, how you could work differently going into the future. What have you learned? You know, what will you stop doing? What will you, what don't you need to do? What actually, you know, wasn't really benefiting you as an organisation? If what, you know, what wasn't sort of contributing to your targets and your outcomes, and maybe, you know, this period is sort of teaching you things that aren't quite so important as you thought that they were. And then Akibo have got these kind of this sort of, I don't even know what hashtag is, but it's a hashtag, and it's called Build Back Better, which is about looking at how you can improve as you go forward. And I mean, it's something generally that One Walsall would always, you know, has always supported and encouraged anyway. So it's looking at kind of becoming a more robust, a more sustainable organisation. It's something that we, you know, have always encouraged, and I think all CVSs do, because we want, you know, we want to see a strong and sustainable voluntary sector. So it's about carrying out things like an organisational review, looking at your values, your purpose, whatever you call it, whether it's values, purpose, mission, and your objects, which are within your constitution. So looking at those things and just making sure that they're still relevant. You know, they might have changed. They might have changed anyway, but they could well have changed because of this situation. And it's worth reviewing those things and making sure that what you're doing is responding to the needs of your service users. And reshaping your services, thinking about the things that you deliver and how you deliver them. Is that all still relevant? Is it still working? Can you change it so that it's more efficient? I've seen loads of things recently about, you know, there's a call for organisations and businesses to become more environmentally friendly going forward. I think everybody's seen the strange benefits that have come from this situation in terms of the environment and the impact that we have, you know, on the environment, and the opportunity to reduce that impact. And you know, there's sort of calls for the government to be more supportive of those organisations who can show that they are more considerate to the environment and to the impact they have. So things like that, reshaping things and thinking, you know, be more forward thinking about the way that you deliver. Look at your structure and your board. Make sure that people's roles are clear. If there's opportunity to reshape that structure. I'm not saying necessarily get rid of people or make redundancies or anything like that, but just reshape what people do and how they work, and consult with your staff, consult with your volunteers, and see what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, and see what opportunities, what suggestions they might have. Measure your impact. I know I go on about it all the time, but it's so important to be able to say this is the difference that we've made, because if you can't show that you're making a difference, you're unlikely to get local support, you're unlikely to get financial support. So it's really important, and think of everything. You know, I talk to loads of organisations where they say, well, we just do this, and you think, I'm sure they don't. And then when you dig a little bit deeper, actually the difference that they make to individuals' lives is huge. But they just don't realise that's just kind of part of their sort of everyday service, part of their everyday running, and they forget actually the difference that they're making to people. So it's really important to kind of really take a fresh look at that. And again, ask people, ask their service users, really ask questions and ask volunteers, ask people who are new to the organisation, and ask them why they joined or why they got involved, and they'll tell you something different than what you think. Consider partnership working. I think, again, as I said, I think there'll be more enthusiasm for it. I think there'll be more opportunities. There's always been support and encouragement from us and from funders for people to work in partnership and to link up where that's appropriate and where it works well, and we can support that partnership working if that's something that you're looking to do. Build up your reserves. I mean, it's a bit of a holy grail for charities and for community groups to have a reserves of up to 6 months generally is what funders would accept. That might increase potentially after this, we don't know. But I think it's something that that all organisations should start thinking about if they haven't already. And it will be slow progress, and it will be, you know, it could be difficult, but it's worth at least thinking about. It's worth looking at your opportunities to do that, and develop your disaster recovery plan for the future. I doubt that many organisations have had a disaster recovery plan in place. And you know, you don't want to assume that this is all going to happen again. I think we would be very unlucky if something else happened, but it would be worth thinking about. It would be worth looking, and there will be loads of resources online. You know, the NCVO, other sort of national online bodies would be able to advise on this, and it might be something that kind of comes up in the next few months, advising organisations of how to plan for the worst case scenario and how to protect their organisation against it. And that's it. So those are our contact details. So Colin does the same job as me, but he covers a different area. But at the moment, obviously, we're sort of just covering the whole borough between us. And Leighton is our funding officer, who is vehemently gathering information about all of this funding that's coming out and circulating that to everybody. So please get in touch with any of us. We're here all of the time, and just to kind of, I mean, it's been on hold a little bit, but we started, before all of this happened, we started to trial a tool which was a sort of an organisational health check, or a triage tool, that we'd started to use with organisations, which was going really well. Obviously, this has kind of put a bit of a halt to it, but it will continue. And that's very much looking at organisational reviews. It's looking at your board, your structure, your funding plans, your finances, your volunteers. It goes through each area, each of the kind of critical areas of your organisation, and it identifies the things that are working really well and the things that you could improve on. And then it's sort of, I mean, it's a mixture between a kind of qualitative and quantitative. So there are some kind of scores in there, but it's meant to kind of really help you to think about the areas that you could be kind of working on. So if anybody is interested in knowing a bit more about that, then please come back to me. As I said, it's sort of been on hold recently, but we're hoping to kind of get started again. And that's it. So if anybody's got any questions now, I'm going to stop sharing. Feel free to ask.
Amy, it's Dave. I'd just like to ask if anybody has actually found to date that they found something better, a better way of working as a result of coronavirus.
I think, Dave, from my point of view, the virtual meetings, as I said, I was in a meeting with the Black Country CVSs earlier, and we all agreed that post-lockdown we're going to continue doing them remotely because it just saves so much time on travel, expenses, etc. So there is something to be said, and also for the green environment, the green agenda, that absolutely.
I would absolutely agree with that as far as other things are concerned. But as far as the museum, that wouldn't work because it's a physical space. Yeah. And my biggest concern is just the fact that although we are there to keep the heritage of the museum and the vehicles and artifacts, it is our people that I'm most concerned about increasingly, that they are isolated and not coming in, and the mental health issues that is worryingly likely to see. But we can't. We need to get them back so that they can then decide. We need the permission for them to be able to come if they want to and feel that it's safe. We can make all that provision, but when they have the choice, and because they haven't got the choice, then this isolation and loneliness continues.
Yeah, absolutely. There is some funding, I think, through Mind, which is around mental health as a response to the COVID situation. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember how much it's for. It was up to 50,000, wasn't it?
Yeah, that funding's closed, though. That was one of the ones that closed early because it was so oversubscribed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll perhaps have a look for you for something else then.
Yeah.
I think one of the issues, picking up Andrew's point, is that an awful lot of our volunteers are over 70, a very high proportion of them, and obviously we are limited, if you like, by more advisory, in an advisory way anyway, limited more than other people as to what we can do, but it doesn't stop some of us.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Sorry. Go on.
It's Maureen. I found out that I've done a lot of these meetings, and it seems a lot of volunteers, a lot of organisations are producing the same services. And I'm just wondering if the same people are receiving multiple duplicated services. So that's something I think I'd like to look into.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, it depends, I suppose, on the level of duplication, doesn't it? But I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong in somebody having, you know, getting support from a few different organisations, even if the support is similar. I think that's probably okay. But I think, Maureen, what might be useful is to kind of link up those services at least, or at least kind of create a sort of a link between you and them, so that you have an understanding of kind of what else is happening in the local area as well as them.
Can I just comment on Martin and Andrew? And I'm just thinking about the isolation of your volunteers. I mean, obviously, the pair of you are on Zoom here chatting with us today. Are there opportunities to you to use something like Zoom with your volunteers, even if it's only just keeping in touch with them?
That is something.
I know you can't do something physical with them, but
I think, yeah, keeping in touch with them is very important. Martin's been doing virtual tours of the museum, putting them on YouTube website, and that's great for, you know, the general public as well. The thing that our volunteers love about coming into the museum is that they bring their skills and they work on stuff. They look after the collection, if you like, and develop it and maintain it and restore it. And they miss both the sharing of those skills, but also the interaction with each other. I mean, quite honestly, we start with coffees and teas and chat, and then we might think, oh, it's about time we went and got on with some work, you know. and that is golden time.
We do try and keep in touch largely between the three of us that are here today. We have done quite a bit of communicating with our volunteers by Facebook, via text, via the odd telephone message and that sort of thing, just to try and keep them, just to let them know that we're still around. But certainly I would back what Andrew's just said. You know, it is the face-to-face interaction and the using of the skills and things which is so important. And the sooner we can get people back, even in a very limited way, you know, that's obviously going to be good for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think, sorry, Amy, sorry.
No, it's all right. I wasn't going to say anything.
I was just going to say, I'm not saying that this is a solution for you and your volunteers, Martin and Andrew, but it's going back to one of Amy's points about the volunteers that have signed up through our website. She said there are about 600. It's kind of settled around the 600 mark, but we've only managed to place 43% of those volunteers. So there's 57% that are still waiting to be really anxious to be placed and do some good, give something back, just help out at this difficult time. That's not unusual. That figure is being replicated regionally and nationally, and also with the NHS Good Sam appeal. They've only managed to place about 30% of the 250,000 that signed up through that. So there's a lot of volunteering kind of excitement and energy out there of people wanting to help. And again, One Walsall is already starting to go through some of the processes that Amy has talked about and thinking about post-lockdown. And we want to try and galvanise this kind of volunteer energy moving forward. So it is a plea to everyone to try and think about how you could use volunteers, whether it's for telephone befriending calls, forming those Facebook groups, or helping with social media, or anything like that. That, you know, there's a whole cohort of people out there who are chomping at the bit to help and getting quite agitated with us when they can't. But I think, you know, this is, as I say, it's not just Walsall, this is replicated across the country. But, you know, if all this energy and willingness to help is out there, we really want to look at that moving forward, but we may have missed the boat. If we don't engage people now, they may not want to come back, especially when people go back to work and get on with their normal lives, whatever normal looks like. So that's just one thing to think about. And I think, you know, the other thing about how we work differently, yes, you know, Zoom calls is one of the things, what the kind of office space we'll be looking at, what do we need, what will our services look like moving forward. But again, just picking up on Amy's point about the collaboration and the partnership kind of energy, going back to my substantive post, once I finished as interim CEO, is partnership manager. And I think, you know, there's a real kind of, again, force for people thinking differently and about who they can link up with, who they can work collaboratively with, regardless of size and shape of your organisations. And a rich mixture of different organisations working together can be a really powerful tool, not only to funders and very attractive to funders, but actually, more importantly, for the service users you're trying to support, because there'll be a whole cohort of different skills, knowledge and abilities within some kind of consortium that can really support people moving forward.
Jeff, say something.
Come off mute.
I'll get used to it one day. I'm just wondering if there is the opportunity to have this kind of discussion, but specifically on the collaboration and partnerships, to explore the issues to do with how you share resources, how you share expertise. I'm convinced, because we've got our expertise, but we've got gaps in our expertise. And I'm sure there are other people out there who are far better at doing things, certain things, than we are. And I think just the opportunity to work smarter might be there, and it might be worth the discussion.
It might be worth, Jeff, you having a chat with Martin or Andrew or Alan from Aldridge Transport Museum if you haven't already. There might be potential opportunities there if you're happy to have that conversation.
Yeah, we'd be very pleased to talk.
Okay.
And I think that might be a theme for a future forum, Jeff, thinking about it, because I mean, we could have themed, I can see all the staff making notes busily. Oh, okay. I think, you know, we could have that themed around certain categories of work, whether it's mental health, domestic abuse, digital inclusion, whatever it is. You know, these forums seem to be quite popular and seem to be reaching out to a lot of different organisations. And I think if we theme them around certain categories of support and look at who would want to collaborate, but also, Jeff, have something about general support in terms of back office support, sharing space, that kind of thing. So I think we can work on that.
It's almost like a dating agency, isn't it? You know, this is what I offer. This is what I'm looking for.
Do we swipe left or right? I don't know.
I think in all seriousness, you know, it would be a very easy exercise to go, we're good at this, we're not good at that, and this is where we need help.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I think Colin's setting up some more informal forums in the next couple of weeks, which might be that might be a kind of a starting point for those kind of discussions, but we'll certainly have a look at doing a themed one for that next time. Right, has anyone got any more questions? If there's anything, if anyone's got any more questions, or if anyone's got any suggestions for future forums or particular asks for support, then please either put it in the chat or contact us directly afterwards. That's absolutely fine. It'd be really helpful to get some feedback though on how you found today, and as I said, suggestions for kind of future forums in terms of, you know, how we deliver and what we deliver. So please do that. Is there anything else that we need to say, Dee, before I sign off?
No, Amy, I'd just like to thank you and the rest of the team. You know, you've all worked really hard on these forums, so thank you. I think they're really useful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Really interesting and helpful. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lisa.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Alex? Oh, he's gone.
I think
He's
he
gone.
literally just went then.
Yeah,
Is Julie gone?
I think. No, I think
I'm
she's.
still
Oh yeah, I can see.